Hi, this is Mr. Cordes, and today, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to be starting the author study unit. The author study unit is pretty awesome simply because you get to pick the author that you want to study. And so we are taking a look at three really well-known authors who kind of have a different, unique voice for the perspective that they're coming from. So we are going to be looking at Maya Angelou, Sandra Cisneros, and Edgar Allan Poe. These are the three authors that we're going to concentrate on. And before you select your author and kind of pick his or her stories and poems that you want to focus on, today's a day where we will be introduced to all of these writers and begin to learn information about all of them. Okay, so today's a day for us to kind of just gather that information. What you see in front of you is the assignment itself. This is going to take us to the end of the school year, and this actually corresponds with the final for our class. We're going to be specifically looking at how the author's life, how the author's voice, and the author's writing all kind of mix and tie in together. And I'll talk more about that later, but right now, let's just introduce ourselves to these three people. Your goal for this assignment right now is to take notes, take at least 1 page of notes per author. So that's 3 pages total, using one Google Doc, and you're going to submit it by the due date. Okay, by the time that I've stated that it's due. Okay. And the great thing is that not only have I provided you with tons of information, I've also got a bunch of videos for you as well. Okay, so we're going to kind of be bringing and pulling in all these things. It's not just one spot that you need to go to look for your information. There are numerous things that you can pull from as far as who is Edgar Allan Poe, who is Maya Angelou, who is Sandra Cisneros. So we're going to pull from all of those. So let me review the assignment. It tells us, it says, please take 3 pages of notes on all 3 authors. So 1 page of notes for each. You can set this up Cornell note style, the focus note style, which we've done earlier in this year. If you just kind of want to list and bullet point your items, you can do that as well. I would suggest having things from the documents that are in front of you right here, as well as the videos. So if you click on these, they're going to take you to a general overview. Okay, this is the same material that we would get from our textbook from the class. I just put it on a document so I could kind of separate it all. But for each author, it's going to kind of go through their life, things of importance for them. It gives you a background and then kind of moves you into them as a writer. And then kind of their overall impressions on the world. So yes, they've done a lot of things, but like in their lifetime, but how has that impacted the bigger audience? Okay, why do we study these authors? Okay, so if you look at Edgar Allan Poe, it kind of talks about his history, his background, which is a very sad and unfortunate life. If you look at Sandra Cisneros, it's the idea of her finding her own voice because she couldn't find it in other places of literature. So it begins to talk about her childhood, what it was like to tell stories, and then kind of growing up and then looking at her literary contributions. There's lots of things. This list actually isn't up to date. She has written more since this publication. There's also Maya Angelou. You've got her life. Where she comes from and her background, and then moving into her finding her own voice and moving up. So there's a lot of information in these things or in these handouts. I want you to read through those. That's going to be one of your first tasks. For this, let me see if I can present. Cool. For the author study, these are our 3 main authors. Okay. And again, like I mentioned, you get to pick the one that you want to focus on. Maya Angelou, she is an African-American, a female poet and writer. She's also a civil rights and human equality activist. For the longest time, she purposefully set forth kind of a tone, kind of this this demeanor of this is how we should behave. This is how we should treat each other. Her books and poems are phenomenal. I love reading them because they have such an in-depth meaning to them. So and you guys can read about her past and you guys can read about her motivations for writing, but she has just a great way of kind of saying like, we're all human, we all matter, and everyone's voice needs to be heard. And so she has this great way of just showing kindness. And she is definitely a human rights activist to allow people the opportunity to be on the same level. She definitely, as an African American, has suffered through the segregation, through racism. So she has definitely felt less than. And as she developed her voice in writing, she became an equal, and actually, I believe, has surpassed. She's one of the best writers. She's just phenomenal. She's just phenomenal. These video links I'll post in the assignment, so you guys can go back there and check those out. Sandra Cisneros. Sandra Cisneros is our Hispanic American female writer and novelist. She actually still continues to do lots of writing. She believes in finding your voice in the conversation. So she actually tells a story about going to school and feeling different, and then not seeing that difference represented in literature, in history. And so she's like, well, what about me? What about my voice and my culture and where I come from? So she actually kind of stepped into this place of, hey, here's my community, here's my culture, and here's why I should represent that. So The House on Mango Street, it's actually a collection of little short stories. And they kind of all together manifest into one novella. However, she wrote that purposefully because when she was in school, she couldn't find a house that represented her. They talked about like a white picket fence and, grass in the front yard. And her house was in Chicago, which was a much different structure and take on anything else. She was like, well, where am I in this story? So she began to make known for her own voice, which encompassed her culture. The last guy that we have is Edgar Allan Poe. He's our American Gothic poet and writer. You guys know him because he's got like really dark and disturbing and mysterious stories. He actually has a very tragic childhood, like horrible relationships with family. Suffering with love and loss. It's quite tragic. But he wrote poems like The Raven, short stories like The Pit and the Pendulum, Cask of Amontillado. I remember growing up and sneaking out to watch television like super late at night, and there would be like old horror movies that were on, and most of the time they were Edgar Allan Poe stories. And so that's probably why I like him the most, just because he's got like this twisted way of telling a story, and it's kind of like you go along with it, and then suddenly it's like, ooh, that kind of took a turn. He primarily, one of the things that he is known for is the clue puzzle technique. He is kind of the founding father of mystery novels, where you take key components and you kind of piece them together as you go along, and then the very end you kind of, oh, wow, this is what happened. And you have to kind of go back and match things up. He was the first one to kind of do that detective work. And so his, even though he's known for like Gothic and horror and all the dramatics that go along with that, he is primarily responsible for mystery and clue solving or puzzle solving within his novels. Okay. Various assignments that we're going to do. You guys are going to be taking notes on the various authors, because I do want you to have a general sense of all three, and that's your task today, is to get information, a page of information about Sandra Cisneros, a page of information about Maya Angelou, a page of information about Edgar Allan Poe. We'll be taking some quizzes over your stories. We've got some activities. I'm going to kind of modify these things as we progress through. The essay that we're working with is actually going to be, I'm going to come back over here to the assignment. When we actually do our writing, I kind of want to take us down. You guys have done a great job of learning analysis and commentary and context and concrete detail over the semester. Now, our challenge will be to link the author's life in relation to what they write into what that means in the story and how do they write it. So it's multi-leveled this time. So you're going to look at the final for this class and say, oh my gosh, we only have to write, 16 sentences or whatever. It's very purposeful in those sentences. And I'm going to make sure that we have quality videos, and I'll give you guys instruction, and we'll have time to work in class that kind of guide us through all of that. Okay. So if you would for me, please take a moment. You get to decide where you want to start. You do, for this assignment, we'll be taking notes on all three. So go through the different handouts first, read through those, take notes, watch the videos to help support your items, get a full page of notes. And once you have those full 3 pages on one Google Doc, you can go ahead and submit it before the deadline. Okay. Go ahead and message me if you have any questions or concerns. Again, today's a day where we're just gathering information from these 3 great writers. I'll talk to you guys soon.